So, for our second podcast, we're welcoming Christine Werrell, who is the NADP Country Advisor for Wales. All of our NAD projects and plans rely on input from members and our special advisors as well. Christine is our advisor for events and policy in Wales. We've known each other for quite a while now, as we joined the NADP Board of Directors together quite a few years ago. So welcome, Christine.
Hi, Lynn.
Okay, to start with, can you just tell us something about yourself and the institution where you're working now?
Yes, so my role within Cardiff University is Head of Disability and Access Support Services, which means I am responsible for disability services and our academic skills and peer mentoring service for our undergraduate and taught postgraduate students. Both services are really about making higher education more accessible, which is why it's an interesting remit to be responsible for. As Lynn said, I've been an NADP director, and I couldn't remember the year, so I struggled to think how long it was, but it was quite some time ago. And I was vice chair of NADP for a year before I stepped down from the board as a full director in 2019. And I've been representing Wales since that time. So that's a bit about me.
So how big is your team or your two teams at the university?
So if we focus on the disability service, Lynn, there are 31 of us. So I've included myself, but we do have disability advisors, three of whom work specifically with students with mental health difficulties. And we also have non-medical help services and an assessment centre. And of course, we have our administrators. I would say that's 31 people. They're not all full-time staff. The institution, so Cardiff, is it's quite a large institution. We've got just over 33,000 students. Most of those students are undergraduates. There's sort of over 23,000 that are undergraduate students. So we're quite a large institution. We have just over 4,000 students who have told the university about their disability.
Yeah, that figure can hide quite a few behind that as well. So
yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about the how many students do we support, which is always, I think, is an interesting question, because of there are various ways in which students engage with services. So, but thinking about the students, for me, I think we support all of the students, whether it's directly through those that have come to the service, have met with an advisor, or are receiving some non-medical help support, or be it through the students who have asked an inquiry because they had a one-off need, and that's got supported and resolved by our first line of contact team, or whether it's our work with academic staff, where we are working with our colleagues to look at how things are done within programs of study and that sort of developmental side, where you're looking to make a difference for the disabled students who are studying on those programs. So, for me, I think it's about supporting all of those students, and of course that way you support students who, for whatever reason, haven't told you that they have a disability or they have an impairment. So hopefully we try and reach as many students without relying on them having to tell us directly.
Well, that kind of brings us quite neatly to a question which I was going to ask a bit further down the line, but asking about inclusivity. We hear quite a lot about it, I think, across the UK. but we're hearing that it's quite patchy in some universities, in some departments. What's your experience of inclusivity across Wales?
I would say it's the same, Lynn, in as much as it's patchy across institutions, and there's pockets of good practice or excellent practice within institutions as well as across institutions. So I think I'm not surprised. I don't feel when I'm at sort of NADP conferences or other conferences and we're all sort of talking about the challenges we face in our institutions. I think it's one of those areas where actually there doesn't feel to be much of a difference. I think the one thing that's been more noticeable in recent years is, if anything, England appear to be doing more to address it with the Disabled Students Commission and the work of the Office for Students, which of course don't extend into Wales. Their remits don't extend into Wales. So I sort of pointed to that development in the Welsh Government's most recent consultation on DSA changes, because there was a question about inclusive practice and inclusive learning and teaching in relation to DSAs. So I did point to the developments in England, because those things aren't being coordinated and looked at and developed in the same way in Wales. So whilst the patchiness is the same, I think there's more of evidence that for English institutions, there's some guidance and at least an attempt or approach or an aim to make a difference to that patchiness.
Yeah, one of the things we've been actually talking about with the Disabled Students Commission is intersectionality. It's something NADP is actually using as a nice little tool to increase understanding that one size doesn't fit all when it comes to disabled students or any particular impairment. Is that a term that's generally in use in Wales at the moment, or is it still coming in like it is coming in England?
I think it's again, I think that's very similar. It's something that's been seen more and more over the last 2-3 years, possibly 4. I have to say, like most people, time has become a bit weird with COVID. But yeah, I think at the last sort of certainly the last 3 years, it's a term that you've seen sort of being used more and more. And yes, that's the same across England and Wales. I'm aware that the former Equality Challenge Unit, one of their last conferences, had intersectionality as a theme. Which might have been about 2017. So I think there's been that sort of increasing use of it and seeing it in terminology. And I think it is important that we aren't complacent when there are changes to legislation or guidance or support that's available, that we're not complacent and assume that will address the needs of every disabled student. And I think that's coming through with some of the information and the sort of feedback that's being given to things like the Higher Education Commission of Experiences of Disabled Students, when you can see there's a difference between how DSA works for students with different impairments, the work of the Pocklington Trust highlighting the difficulties that visually impaired students have with some of the DSA support. I think intersectionality is important, that to make sure that we don't assume something is done and dusted because there is something available. It's making sure that it actually does make a difference to everyone that it is supposed to make a difference to, and understanding why perhaps something isn't making a difference. What is it about the people that aren't seeing the positive outcome or the change that's supposed to have happened? Why aren't they seeing that? Is it because of their specific impairment? Is it because of another protected characteristic? Or is it something completely is it socioeconomic, or is it because they're first in the family, if you look at university provision? So I think it's always important to be looking at those things so that we don't just assume everything's
I quite agree with you there. It's one of my top things at the moment is using that, as I say, to try and look at the provision we provide as a country for the students, because everyone has different backgrounds and different needs. Even, you talk about dyslexic students, and some people talk about mild dyslexia and severe dyslexia, but dyslexia is dyslexia. What does have a big impact on it is that variation in other factors that have input into that. And I don't think that's very well understood at the moment. So it's something I think we can keep fighting on.
Yeah.
Okay, going to a bit about Wales. Many of our members, in fact, most of them are familiar with the English system, where students can study higher education at both colleges and universities. Is that the same in Wales?
Yeah, that's the same. We have higher education provision within further education colleges. And other things that are similar or the same is the UCAS application. Students apply through UCAS, so they will have Welsh and English and institutions on their list of institutions they've applied to. Okay, do you think that many Welsh students take the opportunity to state their disability requirements on application, or do you find that they're actually coming through quite a way and getting settled into university before they actually make themselves known to you? Again, Lynn, I think very, very similar to my colleagues across the UK. That we have students who are, for whatever reason, seem to be reluctant to tell us about their disability before they arrive, so they're not putting it on the UCAS form. We have a large number that do put it on the UCAS form, but I think all those sorts of awareness of the low number of students who do tell the universities who are reluctant. I think those sort of concerns about whether or not it will affect their application, I think those are the same across the board. And obviously a big part of what we do is providing information and trying to get that advice and that information to applicants or even prospective applicants, so they're aware of the benefits of sharing that information, and certainly reassuring parents as well as the students themselves that the information, it's for a positive rather than a negative reason. So we still do a lot of work on that sort of assurance that it's for a benefit rather than as a detriment, to tell us as early as possible through the application process. But yes, we still have a large number who tell us when they enrol, because that's another distinct point, and as well as after they've enrolled. And of course, for some students, they are making a decision that they don't think they're going to need to tell anyone. They don't think there's going to be any issues, or they don't think they're going to need any adjustments. And then, of course, either something changes or there is actually a need for those adjustments to be made. So then they get in touch with us.
I remember vividly one student who came into the office very upset because they weren't coping on their new course a month in, and said, "But I'm over 18 now. I'm an adult, so therefore I shouldn't be dyslexic anymore, should I?" Oh. So we had to put some support in fast there. Yeah. Okay, so going back to kind of disabled students allowances, does this operate differently in Wales? Are there any different aspects to it?
Just trying to think. So in terms of, education is devolved. So we have a department in Wales. So thinking of, there's the department for education. We have the skills, higher education and lifelong learning department. And we have Student Finance Wales, and they deliver through the student loan company. So we're dealing with the same sorts of structures and the same sort of organisations. There were some changes with some differences, between the DSAs, but DSAs are changing in the same as in England, as in there's going to be one allowance in 21-22. So there's that sort of bringing all of the pots together for that one allowance. That's the same. Couple of differences that will remain is the students don't have to contribute towards a laptop if they're funded through Student Finance Wales, and Student Finance Wales still fund bands 1 and 2 support through the DSA without it needing to be an exceptional circumstance. So similarities, Student Finance Wales very similar to Student Finance England on a much smaller scale, and both use the student loan company to deliver their services, but there's some slight differences in the allowance, which of course is interesting when for us at Cardiff, we have pretty much a 50-50 split. For there's a few anomalies, but essentially students in receipt of DSA is pretty much 50-50 whether they're SFE or SFW funded. So we might be slightly more aware of those differences than institutions that don't have very many SFW funded students or don't have many SFE funded students.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. So it's differential funding, and Cardiff have to work out who's who and pick up the pieces of those that don't get as much funding then.
Yeah, so we changed, as most of the institutions in Wales will have just amended their sort of fund for non-DSA students to pick up the bands 1 and 2 costs for SFE funded students, because obviously we want to make sure our students have the same experience regarding of who funds them.
So just to kind of close a bit here, what do you think that you can bring to your role as the Welsh advisor to the NADP board? Is there anything we can do to help you and your colleagues in Wales more effectively?
I think I can bring the sort of my experience of the sector, because I've worked in disability services since 2000, which is a very long time ago, and I've always worked in Welsh institutions, so certainly have knowledge of the sector and experience of the sector, and I think I bring that to my role as the advisor. We are there aren't that many institutions in Wales, so we have an active network, both in terms of institutions, but we also have 2 active DSA forums, one in the north and one in the south. And because geographically I'm based in the south, I attend the South Wales Forum meetings, but I do have links with the chair of the North Wales meeting. So I'm able to sort of take things from meetings that are already going on for members in Wales, and I can bring them to NADP if we want to make sure, if the NADP board want to make sure there is a fuller consultation on something that from a Welsh perspective, those networks are there, and I can take it through those networks, as well as, of course, the opportunity through the email lists that are open to all individual members. So it just allows that sort of networking and facilitates that networking. The DSA forums are particularly helpful because they have Welsh Government and Student Finance Wales representation on them. So yeah, it's about being part of those networks and sort of being able to then have that sort of consultation and have that members' involvement. And in terms of how NADP can support members in Wales, I mean, I know from our from being a full director when I had responsibility for the training and CPD, continuing professional development work, when we ran events that considered the geography really of the UK, because it's not just about events being held in Wales, it's about being in locations that it's easy to travel to. So that did increase attendance. So just thinking about where events are held, absolutely important, when we're all allowed to actually go and attend events again. But also online, I think, we've all learnt how much we can achieve online. And whilst I think we'd all appreciate the opportunity for a blended approach when we can, I don't think any of us want to lose some of the benefits of online events because of the convenience. So I think online events certainly will certainly help Welsh members because of the rural nature of Wales, but will help any of our members attend where travel is an issue or is a barrier to attending. And I think it's also about, which is part of my role, is sort of encouraging and facilitating the full board to be curious about Wales, to be curious about what things will mean for Welsh institutions, students who study in Wales. And that's part of my role, is to generate that active curiosity so that the board isn't a recipient of information about Wales. There's an active interest in Wales, as there is in England and as there is, for Scotland and Northern Ireland. So we can be truly representative.
Yeah, that's absolutely great. And that is part of the reason we've worked so hard to make sure that we have country advisors in order to ensure that we're well informed. Your point about stimulating interest is a good one, and one that I hadn't thought of, but it's just so true. We need it. We need to be thinking about the whole of the UK when we're supporting students. Just as we have link contacts with Europe, and as we're gaining more contacts across the rest of the world as well, we must make sure that we're still supporting all our members in all parts of the UK. So thank you very much. That's really great. Some great information there, and I learned some new things. I hadn't realised you could still get Band 1 and 2 support from DSAs in Wales. So there's still stuff that we all need to learn on this. But much appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
No, thank you, Lynn. You were very gentle. Thank you.